Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 332. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is some new Godzilla Ultimates figures from Super 7. So, Wave 4 of Godzilla Ultimates was recently released. There were two figures, as there have been for pretty much every Godzilla wave so far. So, it was Mogira, who is a robotic kaiju creature. He kind of looks like a duck or something. He's a weird looking guy. He's got a drill for a nose. If these things were $50, I definitely would have picked up Mogira. He's goofy, but he's kind of charmingly goofy. I like him. But these figures are not $50. They are $85 American. I'm Canadian. In Canada, we pay an extra 40 cents on every dollar. Plus, then there's shipping. And these figures are not small. So they come in really big boxes when they ship. And then I always get dinged with customs fees as well, which can go upwards. I think I've paid probably $60 is the most I paid at the door for customs. So that all adds up. And when I look at Mogira, I'm like, he's cool, but he's not that cool. And Super 7 also manufactures their Godzilla reaction figure line, which is their smaller kind of Kenner style simple figures. In fact, I just got a couple of new ones of those in the mail too. I'm not going to review them this episode, but yeah, this is a Godzilla reaction figure. So the figure is small and simple, and you can see that these things would be a lot more affordable to ship. You can, double them up, stick them in a box like this, so the blisters kind of, and there you go. You can pack quite a few of those in a box. These Ultimates that I'm going to be talking about today, not the case. Big, bulky, and the bigger the box is, the more likely it is I'm going to get hit with customs fees. The customs always estimate the value of these toys, and the bigger they are, probably the higher they estimate, and I end up paying probably more customs than I should pay. Anyway, that's really neither here nor there. All I'm saying is that these figures are not cheap, and Mogira, he just didn't really hit that line I needed him to hit to justify the purchase. Some of these figures I need to have, and I'm willing to pay whatever I have to get them. Space Godzilla is a character that I've always thought was really cool. And he's not just, Godzilla in an astronaut helmet or something. Space Godzilla is a whole separate character. So he's a completely different monster. There is a movie called Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. So Space Godzilla is a creature that comes from space. He looks like Godzilla. He's very similar in build in that he's a bipedal lizard guy, except he's got all these kind of crystals that protrude out of him. And he's kind of just given the name Space Godzilla. So yeah, I had to have him because he's really cool, and there's never really been a figure of him that's been easy to find. Now, I know that's changed in more recent years. I would consider myself a Godzilla collector going back 20 years, but my collection was always really small because there's no Godzilla figures to buy. Now, there have been toys in Japan, and if you were really willing to go online, maybe go to eBay and pay really high prices for exported toys that aren't even necessarily the greatest quality. I just wasn't in that market. I was wanting to buy kind of local, I don't mean local, but just kind of like mass produced American style toys. And as far as that goes, there was really no Godzilla line to speak of. And when there was, it was mostly just Godzillas. So you didn't get all the other Toho monsters. So I've kind of made peace with that. So even though I've been a fan of Gigan and Megalon and Destroya and Space Godzilla and all those characters for years, I just kind of thought I might never get toys of these characters, and it is what it is. But now, not only is Super 7 producing some great toys, but there's also Haya Toys is doing really cool stuff, and SH Figure Arts is doing stuff. There's a couple other companies. There's even Funko Pops. There's the reaction figures. There's so many Godzilla toys right now. It's crazy. It's actually kind of hard to keep up. And yeah, I can't believe there's this many different companies doing well making Godzilla toys after such a drought for decades. So anyway, Space Godzilla, very cool. I bought him. I'll be honest, I got cold feet with this figure a couple of times. I pre-ordered it when it first went up for pre-order, like probably more than a year ago. And it was just kind of sitting in my pre-order list on Big Bad Toy Store. And then when I was kind of worried about my budget, I was like, I think I'm going to have to cancel that figure. And then some time passed, and I saw people posting like, oh, here's some production shots of it. It's going to come out soon. And I was like, oh man, maybe I should pre-order it again because I was worried it was going to come out. and then it would be sold out and I would never be able to get it. So I pre-ordered again. I felt safe doing that. Big Bad Toy Store doesn't take a deposit from you or anything. So even though I don't like pre-ordering things and canceling them, it seems, a little dirty to leave Big Bad hanging like that. I felt comfortable in pre-ordering it a second time, which I did. But as I was waiting for a couple more months for this figure to arrive, I was like, should I cancel it? It's a lot of money. But then it actually popped up on Amazon in Canada. And with Amazon, I have Amazon Prime, so there's no shipping. And again, these things are big. The shipping cost really factors into it. Plus, it ships from somewhere in Canada, from like Amazon's Canadian warehouse or something, so there's no customs fees. And it was actually cheaper than even just the base price on Big Bad or whatever. So I scooped them up on Amazon. I canceled my pre-order from Big Bad. And so even though this guy still cost me over $100, it would have probably cost me closer to $200 if I had waited for my Big Bad order to come through, factoring in the shipping and the customs and all that stuff. So I feel I got this guy for a bit of a steal. So I was excited about that. And he is big. This box is heavy. And you can see this thing is like bigger than my head. You get a shot on the back there of like the movie poster for Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, a little bit of a blurb. Now, if you're familiar with these figures from the past, like I have reviewed figures from like Wave 1 and Wave 2, they used to come with a slip sleeve that came over the top. They've done away with that now, so this is how the figure comes. I really don't like how packaging is so inconsistent. When I was a kid, like G.I. Joe packaging essentially looked the same the whole time. So if you wanted to save the packaging, it was a nice consistent packaging. Nowadays, it seems like toy lines change their packaging every year or so. So if you were an in-box collector who liked to keep these on your shelf and you like those slip sleeves, I can imagine it's a little annoying that they've done away with it. But for me personally, I don't care. I open these things, I throw out the packaging, and the nicer the packaging, the harder it is for me to throw out. Because I'm like, oh man, it looks like a lot of time and effort went into this box, and I feel like a lot of my dollars went into pay for the design of the box. So I almost feel like an obligation to keep it to get my money's worth. This box here is nice looking, but it's nothing fancy. I have no problem throwing this box out. So I'm going to open him up shortly. But there you go. You can see him in there. He's hurting my hand to hold him up. He's that heavy. But yeah, you get the base figure in there. You get an alternate head, some alternate hands, and then he's got some of these crystal effects. Because not only does he have crystals that protrude out of his skin, he also has crystals that kind of like protrude out of the ground around him and stuff like that. It's been a while since I've watched the movie, but anyway, so he's got some of those crystal effects, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we're going to open him up. Now, even though I didn't get Mogira, I do have a second figure to talk to you about. Because this one was shown at San Diego Comic-Con, which I think was July. And I saw this thing in the booth. Now, I wasn't there firsthand, but I saw it when people were going through San Diego and they were taking pictures of Super 7's booth. And they had this figure, and I was like, ooh, I must have that. I think that looks super cool. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, it just spoke to me. And I was very happy to hear that this was part of their new model they were trying, in that up to now, all their Ultimate figures have been pre-order only. So they show you a prototype, like a digital prototype. You pre-order it, then it's made to order. They have to hit a minimum, because if not enough people pre-order it, then they don't even make it. They just cancel it. They haven't had to cancel any Godzilla figures thus far, but they have had to cancel figures from other lines that didn't meet that minimum. So yeah, once they hit the minimum and they say, okay, we're going to produce it, that's when we end up waiting a year and a half to get these figures in our hands, because the production time is kind of drawn out. And Super 7 has said they kind of want to get away from that, and they want to start doing in-stock product. So they kind of feel they have a sense of the market now. Like if their Godzilla figures have been selling a steady number, they're like, you know what, we can just go ahead and start producing this, and we're confident we'll make enough money, enough people will buy this. And so I hope that works out for them, because that's what this was. They showed it at San Diego, and then it was up for pre-order a couple of weeks later. I pre-ordered it. Here it is. And as I'm shooting this, there's nobody else on YouTube that's reviewed this yet. By the time I get my video edited and posted, there might be a few other people. But yeah, I kind of felt like I wanted to jump on this, because it's very rare that me, up here in Canada, get something first. So I wanted to show it to you. So this is their Blazing Godzilla Ultimates figure. Now this is a repaint or a recast, I don't know how you want to call it, of the previous Godzilla, a figure that I already have a couple of times in different color schemes. But this one here, like, he's orange, obviously, but I don't know if you can tell from this shot that he is translucent orange. So he is clear orange plastic, and then he's got some like painted like yellow highlights on his chest there, and then he's got yellow eyes and white teeth. And yeah, I think he looks really cool. And when I saw this on the shelf in the San Diego pictures, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to get whatever that is. And I thought I'd have to pre-order it and wait a year and a half to find out that I would have it in my hands. Just, mere like month or two later. That was pretty awesome. So yeah, I think this guy looks great. I haven't shot any videos in a while. For those of you that are my regular viewers, you might have noticed it's been a few weeks, and I'm still not really in the mood to do a video, to be honest with you. But when I got these, I was like, I'm dying to open them. They both arrived yesterday, even though this one came direct from Super 7 and that one came from Amazon. They both arrived within an hour or two of one another. And yeah, I was dying to open them up last night, but I was like, no, I gotta shoot these and show them in the box. There's the image on the back of his box, by the way. So yeah, that is from Godzilla versus Destroya. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, so we're gonna open these up, and we'll do some close-up reviews, and then I'll be back to wrap things up and say goodbye. So here is Space Godzilla outside of the box, and he's a very big figure. He'd be big anyway, but this tail really makes him a much larger figure. Like, just to give you a bit of a size comparison, here he is next to a Marvel Legend. So he's quite a bit taller and takes up a lot more shelf space. So very, very big. And I'll bring out, this is the Godzilla from Wave 1 from Super 7. So he's also got a very big tail. But size-wise, you can see that Space Godzilla is even larger than Godzilla, who was already a pretty big figure to begin with. He's not that much taller, but he is a little bit bigger. Although he was the same price, which was nice. One of the other figures I have from Super 7 is Destroya, and he was a larger figure, but they made up for that in the price. It was a more expensive figure to buy. 85 is kind of the standard price for, I guess, the Godzilla-sized figures. So I'm glad that this guy came in at the American, $85 instead of significantly more than that. I think Destroya was 120 American, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so here he is. So cool looking figure. Right off the bat, I love these like crystals on his back. You can see they are cast in like a translucent plastic, and they've got that kind of pink base, and then it kind of fades up to clear. Yeah, very cool. I like the way those look. And those come all the way down his tail. So his whole tail is covered in those little translucent spikes. Right down to the very end here. Get some of those crystals on there too. So that's very effective. I think that looks really good. Where the tail connects, so that was a separate piece in the box. I had to use a blow dryer to heat this up in order to get that tail to stick, because it was a little tough. You can see it sometimes looks a little awkward the way that joint connects, but you kind of just have to shove it up there a little bit, and it doesn't look too bad once he's standing. Okay, then he also has these translucent crystals on his shoulders. Again, that looks pretty cool. This part here is kind of a soft, rubbery bit. I don't know if you can see it. It's hard to film this because he's such a big toy. He barely fits on my desk. But yeah, so this is kind of a soft rubber bit. We've seen that on other Super 7 Ultimates. Like a lot of their Thundercats come to mind. The kind of what we'll call the crotch piece or the diaper piece is kind of soft rubber, which allows their legs to kind of move out to the side a little bit, like because it has some give, and that's the same reason they've done that here. If this was really hard plastic, his arms would not be able to move at all, but because it's soft, you can kind of push against it a little bit, You can see this kind of like rises up and maybe separates a little bit to give it a little bit more space. Although he still doesn't have a ton of arm movement. There's only so much you can do there. Now he does have elbow joints. You can straighten his arm, bend his arm, his wrists, turn, and go up and down. The head, so there's a couple joints there on the neck. So one joint at the base of the neck here, another joint at the head. The head looks good. Nice paint job on the eyes. I think a pretty good paint job on the teeth as well. Maybe a little gappy in the front there. Maybe could use some braces or something. And then he also has this translucent effect on his forehead. Now I know he shoots a laser. I can't remember if the beam comes out of his mouth or if it comes directly from this thing on his head. There actually was an alternate head. If you bought both figures, both Space Godzilla and Mogira from Super 7, they had an incentive that you would get a bonus pack of heads that shot the energy beams. So Mogira had like a blue electric lightning bolt coming from his head, and Space Godzilla had a yellow bolt coming from either his mouth or from the thing on his head. I can't remember which. I'll pop a picture in here so you can see it. That would have been kind of cool to get the alternate head. But to be honest, I don't really play with my toys. I pretty much pick my favorite pose and I stick them on the shelf, and that's where they stay. So even though getting the head with the laser beams would have been cool, it's probably not how I would have chosen to display him on my shelf permanently. And it would have meant I would have had to buy Mogira, which is a figure I already told you just really wasn't worth the cost to me. So sure, it kind of sucks that I didn't get the extra head, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So yeah, it looks good. The paint job looks good. You can see he's got this like purple kind of paint on his chest, but otherwise he's kind of a grayish green, very similar to Godzilla. His legs, so they seem to move. They might even be the same sculpt. I'm actually looking at my Godzilla right now. I think these might be the same feet, same knees. That would make sense. Save them some money on tooling costs. So, the knees bend, the ankles turn. With any Godzilla figure from any company, he's not going to move too much. There's only so much, dynamic moves you can get from a big lumbering monster like this. He's not going to do yoga. So, anyway, I'm pretty pleased with this figure. He does have, here's his alternate head. Now, this is a gripe I have, not just about this figure, but about all of Super 7's Ultimate Godzilla figures. It seems like such an easy thing to do to give a hinged jaw so that the mouths could open. Because whether you're a little kid or a grown man like myself, whenever you're handling a Godzilla figure, you want to open the mouth and close the mouth and make them roar. Most other companies have hinged jaws on their Godzillas. I don't know why Super 7 doesn't do it. They have said that they don't want to hurt the aesthetic of the figure, and I get that sometimes. Like, if this was a statue, it would probably look better aesthetically on a shelf because he wouldn't have to have some of these like awkward joints around his head and everything that almost makes it look like he's got a turtleneck. But as a collector of action figures, I have accepted that my figures are going to have seams and joints on them in order to make them fun to play with. If I wanted to collect statues, I would collect statues. And I don't want to collect statues. So, as an action figure, he's got joints. I'm okay with that. They should have put a joint on his mouth, same as they should have done it with Godzilla. Now, they give us alternate heads so that we can display them with the open mouth. So, I could pop this one on, and I might. I'm not sure which head I like better, actually. The teeth don't look quite as gappy on this one. So I might even go with this one. And then the other head I think was pretty similar to this, except with it was like a translucent laser beam coming out of his mouth that was permanent. Now again, what I would have preferred and what other companies have done in the past is to have a figure whose jaw opens and closes, and then you could put a removable lightning bolt, or atomic breath or whatever it is in their mouth that you could put in or put out, rather than have to swap out his head 3 different times for all these different options. Like, I don't know how many kids would actually have these toys because they're pretty expensive. But if I was a kid and I had this Space Godzilla and I wanted to play with him, I don't like the thought that every time I want him to roar, I got to go change out his head, and I want him to shoot energy, and I got to go get the other head and put that on. They should be able to do it all with one head. So yeah, he's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with him. He said he's big, he's heavy, got some real weight to him. But I do have one big issue, and this is one of the things that made me question whether I should really buy this figure. I knew I wanted it. As soon as they said they were doing Space Godzilla, I was excited. But then when I saw some of the prototypes and stuff, I was like, ooh, I don't like that. He has got, I don't know what is going on here. He's kind of got this walnut crotch. Like, I don't think Godzillas should have genitals of any kind. But if this guy has genitals, that's a vagina. Like, I don't know. That looks hella weird to me. Like, when you look at Godzilla, again, he's just got this flat, kind of diapery, and that's how you would expect. That's what it looks like on most, rubber dinosaurs. They just kind of avoid the whole genital area. Now, to be fair, Space Godzilla, the original design from the movie, does kind of look like this, but I think it's just extra pronounced on the figure, and especially this gap. Like, this is not accurate to the film. Look at that weird gap. Like, this should come right to that. Like, I can put in another split screen of from the movie. Now, I'm not going to get him in a perfect profile, but I think you can see how he has this kind of design in the front, but it doesn't have this really stark line. It doesn't look so jarring. And I don't know, it's really hard for me not to look at this guy and see just that big gunt, and it's disturbing. Like, it's just slightly open. It's got that seam there. It's kind of gross. I don't know. So yeah, I think it could be better. Now, this is my first ever Space Godzilla toy. Other companies have done it. I don't I don't know if they've done it better. I imagine that they have. I'll put in maybe some split screens here of some other Space Godzillas from some other toy companies so you can kind of see and compare. And who knows, maybe when I go and Google those pictures while I'm editing this, I'll realize that, hey, you know what? Every toy company makes Space Godzilla look like this. Or maybe I will see what I suspect I will see and think that other companies have done it much better and not so glaringly, I don't know, weird. So yeah, there you go. I guess I should also mention he came with some extra hands, so I think he's got 2 extra sets. So he, in the package, I think he actually came with these closed fists, so he can punch. He also has these kind of gripping hands, which almost looks like if you wanted him to be holding a gun or holding a little person or whatever the case might be. I went with these hands. These are my preferred ones that are kind of mostly open. You could probably still put various things in his hand, but yeah, I don't really think Space Godzilla punches very much, and I don't think he's holding a whole lot of things. If anything, he'd probably be more just slashing and pushing buildings over and stuff. So those are the hands that I went with. Same sort of thing with my Godzilla. He had different options too, but I think I went with the same style hand for him on display. So anyway, yeah, I don't know if I have a whole lot more. Oh, I guess I should mention the crystals as well. So these are pretty cool. So he comes with these translucent crystals, and they're solid pieces. They're hollow inside. I don't know, but they've got a little bit of weight to them. If they were hollow, I would expect them to fall over a little bit more. But these, it's almost like a little pylon. So he's got these 2 crystals that you can just display next to him. And then he has these larger ones. And again, for it to be a chunk of kind of translucent plastic, I think it does a pretty good job of kind of coming across like a prism. Like, the way it does kind of reflect light and stuff, you can almost see colors in there. I don't know. So He's got 2 of those. And then he's got these 2 really big ones as well. So all kinds of different size crystals, and you can see once again just how big those are. By bringing a Marvel Legend, it's it's almost as tall. So I'd say those things are about 5 inches tall just on their own, maybe 5.5. So yeah, that's a pretty good bang for your buck, I guess. I don't know if I'll even put these out on display, just because these figures are pretty difficult to display anyway. That's the biggest problem I would say with Godzilla toys is you could make them with really small tails, but then people would complain that they don't look film accurate, so they give them these gigantic tails, but then it becomes near impossible to display them. For me to put him on a bookshelf, he has to sit like this far out. Like you need a really deep shelf because his tail takes up all that room. And there is articulation on the tail. I guess I can talk about that a little bit. My understanding is that they have improved their articulation for their coming figures. Um, their Godzilla -1 figure is starting to hit shelves now. I pre-ordered one, so I'll have one soon. They've made the tails more posable with their newer figures, but this guy's tail moves a lot like the Godzilla's tail, in that there's all these little segments, so it's tons of articulation in there, but it doesn't amount to much because there's so little movement with each given section. So yeah, you can see I can kind of point it up. I can kind of turn it a little bit, but nope, no, it fell right off. But there's really no way that you could display this and tuck it out of the way. Like the articulation is minimal, so it looks cool, but it's going to take up a lot of room. So knowing that these Godzillas are going to take up so much space, I really don't know if I have room to display a bunch of crystals as well. I think it's cool that he came with them, and if I can fit them on my shelf, I'll put them there. But otherwise, I got to prioritize my spacing. And yeah. So anyway, that's Space Godzilla. Pretty cool, except for that. Now here is Blazing Godzilla outside of the packaging. And I think this guy's awesome. I think he looks incredible. He's just something different. I have a lot of Godzilla figures, and there are some that are different colors. Like I have some where he's kind of powering up with his blue energy, and he's got this kind of, his fins are blue and his skin takes on a bluish hue. I have some where he's all fired up. I guess you could call them Blazing Godzilla or Flaming Godzilla or Burning Godzilla, where he does have orange as the main color, but nothing like this. This is pretty unique. The closest thing I have to this style Godzilla would be this Super 7 reaction figure based on the Shogun Godzilla toy. So you can see this guy here is translucent orange. He's got the yellow highlights. So yeah, these guys match up pretty nicely. But otherwise, this Godzilla is very unique in my collection. Otherwise, I'd say the next closest thing would be this Godzilla from NECA, which I can't remember what he's called. He's Blazing Godzilla or Burning Godzilla or Meltdown Godzilla or something like that. But you can see this guy's orange as well. And it's a really cool look. I like that he's kind of like burning up from the inside. His skin looks like magma with those kind of the black wash over the orange. It's very cool. But it's still quite far removed from what we see here with that translucent orange. It's a really cool look. And as I said earlier, it might not be for everybody. There's no movie where he looks like this per se, so it's not really, based on a specific scene. Now, I don't know, maybe some people will tell me otherwise, because they say that this movie is from Godzilla vs. Destroy. That was the movie poster featured on the packaging. And I guess you could say this is sort of from there, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. But anyway, this figure, for comparison, it is the exact same, pretty much, I think. You know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was, but now I'm seeing it's not the exact same. Just looking at those fins, you can see this guy's got the fins up on his neck that this guy does not have. The fins, he's got some really big fins here. This guy doesn't. So that's kind of nice. I think they share a lot of the same parts, but I was thinking this figure was going to be almost an exact repaint of this guy, but he's not. And now I'm curious about the heads. I assume the head sculpts were the same, but maybe they're not. So I have so little room to work with here. Yeah, hard to say. I think those are the same head. But anyway, I loved this figure, and I love this guy too. And now, besides these two, the other Godzilla I have is a direct repaint of this guy. This was the San Diego Comic Con exclusive last year, I believe, maybe the year before. But this guy is painted up green to look more like how Godzilla appears in the comic books. A lot of people assume Godzilla is green because that's how they remember him from comic books and cartoons and such. But in the movies, he's more like this gray color. So I thought this was a pretty neat homage to the comic books. And you'll see he's got an open mouth, so you might think, well, he's got a different head than these guys. But each of these guys come with an open mouth head, just like Space Godzilla. So, for example, this new blazing Godzilla, here's his open head, which I think is the same as this head, just with a different paint job. So yeah, these do look pretty much the same to me, so I think they are. So I have a closed mouth version of this one. I could choose to display it that way, but I kind of like to have these guys on my shelves, one with the closed mouth, one with the open mouth. So they looked a little bit different. Now that I have this guy, I don't know which head I'm going to choose to display him with. I think I kind of like the closed mouth because I don't know, there's something about that big open orange mouth. It makes it look, a little cartoonier or something. Like I almost wish they had painted the inside of his mouth, whether it was yellow or darker orange or something. I just feel like his inside should be darker. So I think for that reason, I think I'm going to go with the closed mouth on this guy. Now, in the movie Godzilla vs. Destroya, there is a scene where Godzilla basically melts down. His core overheats and he blows up. So, Super 7 has previously released this figure, which is like a half melted Godzilla. So, he is also cast in translucent orange. And you can see how his fins are all dipping away and they're all melting away for him. And so he's cast in orange, but then they painted a lot of black over him to kind of give the idea of he's just melting away from the inside. I thought this was a really cool figure. And look at this, it's a hinged jaw. See, that wasn't hard to do. He's got that skeletal hand. I love this figure. I think this guy is super awesome. So you could say that this figure, this new blazing one, is kind of like the in-between. So if you look at my other Godzilla, who's fully normal looking with his solid gray skin, and then you've got this like melted one, this guy would be the step in between, I guess is one way to look at it. But when the melting actually happens in the movie, it's kind of like a stop motion or a transition with the different looks, and it happens very fast. Like to see Godzilla like this on screen, like you can't blink because it happens really quickly. And so I don't think there's really a particular frame of the film where you would say Godzilla looked like this. But I think that's the thought process. Why they went with the all orange one is this is supposed to be the kind of transition version between the other two figures I have. So very, very cool. Now, other than the head, the only other accessories this guy came with are the hands. The same thing we talked about. So he's got closed fists and he's got kind of open grippy hands, and yeah. So anyway, it's nice to have the extra hands, I guess. I don't really care. I kind of like these open clawed hands for Godzilla. So that's what I pose them with. Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say about this. Like the paint job looks really cool. Like even though he's clear orange, they could have just made it clear orange and left it at that. But they've done a really good job of. You can see how it's really dark in the center, and then it gets lighter out to the sides. Sometimes it's hard to tell what was done with paint, and maybe it's just what is done by the thinness and the thickness of the plastic. But I do like the paint job on his face. The yellow eyes look really nice and creepy, and it fixes a problem that a lot of Godzilla figures have where the pupils don't line up. Maybe he looks okay from the side, but when you look at it head on, He looks like he's looking in two different directions, which can make the figure look kind of goofy. This guy here, the fact that his eyes are solid yellow, it doesn't have that. His teeth look pretty good. Like overall, I just think this guy's really, really cool. This is right up my alley. This translucent orange Godzilla, I love it. I do have a complaint. Now, this is a minor quibble, I guess, but there is another Godzilla figure that was released by Super 7. I believe it was in Wave 2, maybe Wave 3 of their Ultimates. And that was a more traditional burning Godzilla, which is a Godzilla in his traditional like gray-green color with orange patches. I don't really care for that look very much, so I didn't buy that Godzilla. Plus, it looked too similar to the Godzilla I already had. In fact, I assumed it was the same Godzilla that I already had, just with orange burning paint job on it. So I passed on it. Now I'm realizing that it might be this mold with like the higher fins and the bigger fins here. So this figure here, where it's not a direct repaint of the figure I already showed you, this is probably a repaint of that burning Godzilla that Super 7 had done. Which would kind of make sense too, because that would be in even more of a transition. You could go from my Wave 1 Godzilla that's fully gray, then the Wave 2 Godzilla that's got the orange patches, then you could go to this one that's fully orange, and then you go to the melting guy over here, and then you've got your full transition, and then you could go, they can release a figure that's fully skeleton. They did that in the reaction figure line, so I don't know if we'll get it in the Ultimates line as well. Here's the reaction figure skeleton, and I think it's pretty cool. Now, would I need to buy this again in the Ultimate format? Probably not, but never say never. So back to my complaint. That version 2 Godzilla with the orange burning patches on him, he came with some additional accessories in that he had all these smoke plumes that you could attach to him. So it was like a translucent, kind of milky, foggy, white translucent plastic. You could snap one on his shoulder and one on his leg and another one on his arm. And it was supposed to give the effect of like there's smoke pluming off of your Godzilla. And when I saw reviews of that figure, I think it had mixed results of how successful that was. It didn't really look believable as smoke, perhaps. But anyway, I get what they were going for. Anyway, when I ordered this figure, Super 7's own website, which is where I bought this from, as well as Big Bad Toy Store, they said in the written description that this figure came with an alternate head, which he did, came with alternate hands, which he did, and then it said he also came with snap-on flame effects. So when I purchased this figure, I was under the impression that I would be getting snap-on flame effects. Mind you, there was pictures, probably about 6 or 7 pictures of the figure in the box. None of those pictures showed the flame effects. Even when you saw the sealed box, I was like, where would the flame effects be in that box? Are they maybe tucked along the bottom that I can't see them? But it seemed obvious that we would get them because it wouldn't be a hard thing for Super 7 to do, because they could just take those plumy smoke effects they already had, recast them in translucent orange or yellow, and then you could snap them on here, and that would really add to this guy's blazing look, because he would have these like flames coming off of him, which I think would look pretty cool. Probably cooler than the smoke effects look. So I was like, it's weird that they say that you're going to get these things, and yet they're not showing them anywhere. But whatever, I'll assume they're going to come. Maybe they're going to come in a separate little baggie or something. I don't know. Anyway, I bought him. He arrived. No flame effects. And I was like, what the hell? So then I went and looked at Super 7's website, and they have changed the description. It no longer says that there are snap-on flame effects. However, Big Bad Toy Store, as of me filming this, it still says there's snap-on flame effects. And I'm sure that write-up that Big Bad Toy Store has just came from Super 7 in their product description. Super 7 must have caught the error, and maybe it was a change in the production. Like they thought they were going to do that and then decided against it for price reasons or whatever. But they changed it on their website. But yeah, Big Bad Toy Store hasn't changed theirs. So, I feel like they should have written something like, we apologize. Originally this was supposed to have a flame effects, but they were no longer included. To people like me that bought this, like when they announced this was live on the website, I bought it like right away, like within the first 10 minutes of it being up there. So I paid for this when the description on the website did say Snap on effects. It arrived. There's no little note in the box that says, hey, sorry, no flame effects. That was a misprint, anything like that. So I feel, a little ticked off about that. I don't really mind when I display them. Chances are the flame effects might not have looked good anyway, and I would have chose not to use them. But anyway, I kind of wish that he came with them. It might have been cool. But otherwise, I think that's really all I have to say about this guy. He's pretty awesome. Both of these new figures are pretty awesome. So yeah, I'm really enjoying these Godzilla Ultimates from Super 7. Okay, so that was my review of the latest Godzilla Ultimates figures from Super 7. I hope you enjoyed the review. Please leave me comments below. I love hearing your guys' opinion on things. So yeah, make sure you like and subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And for those of you who just wanted to hear about the Godzillas, you can now sign off. And thank you very much for watching. But for the rest of you, my loyal viewers who maybe we have a little bit more of a rapport, I just wanted to quickly mention something. And I'm shooting this before I haven't even opened these figures yet myself. So I anticipate liking them when I open them up and shoot the close-up stuff, but I haven't done that yet. I debated on talking about this at the start of the video, but I thought that might be a little heavy for people that were just searching, blazing Godzilla review, and then they got to sit through me going on about some personal stuff. I just wanted to basically let you guys know that my father. All right. Yeah. I suspected it might be difficult to say, but my dad died. All right. I'm gonna tone down the lighting in here a little bit because, yeah, I don't need this glaring ring light shining down on me here as I get a little emotional. But my father passed away um, at the end of August. Um, so yeah, that sucked, and that's why I haven't really been posting any videos. Just haven't been in the mood, and I am. I don't know. I'm a little surprised. I'm getting a little emotional here on camera because I've talked about it a lot, and I'm okay. Um, he was sick for a while. He had a stroke 7 years ago, and we almost lost him then. When they operated on him for the stroke, they found out that he had tumor in his brain and a tumor in his lung, and so they didn't think he was long for this world at that time. But then they did an operation. They removed a big portion of his lung, and they did radiation on his brain, and that pretty much shrunk that tumor entirely. Anyway, he's been a little bit different ever since the stroke, um, but we had him. He stuck around another 7 years, um, but it was really just like the 1st of August or so, like maybe the last day or two of July, that he had a screening for his cancer, and they told him that it was in his bones, and it was back in his brain, it was back in his lungs, and basically there was nothing they could do for him, and it was going to act pretty fast. So he opted to do um, the we have kind of like an assisted death program here in Canada. I don't know if they do that everywhere now or not, but anyway, so they came to the house, and they put the needle in his arm, and so that was weird, like because we knew the day and date it was happening, which is it's a blessing in some ways, but it's just a bit of a head trip otherwise. But I'm one of six of his kids, and most of us live in the area, but a couple of us don't. My brother Brian, who I've talked about a few times on here, who lives in Miami, he was actually vacationing in Europe, and he had to kind of cut his vacation short and scramble home in order to get back here to Nova Scotia, Canada. I have another sister who lives in another province. She had to travel over. But anyway, we all made it here, and we were all with him when it happened. And so, it went about as well as it could have. My friends and family have all been really great and really supportive. Chad, who you guys know from the channel, he's been great. He came to my father's service, and he's been very supportive and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's not like I've been depressed. I'm still going about my life. I'm still hanging out with my friends, having some drinks. I've been hanging out with my family a lot because my brother was home from Miami. He just went home a couple of days ago. Um, and yeah, I've still been buying toys and still buying and reading my comic books and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not like in a depressing funk, but I'm just not really in the mood to come down here and shoot videos about toys. It's just that my priorities are kind of elsewhere right now. So I don't know if I'm going to bounce back from that. If shooting this video will maybe prompt me to come down here and start shooting more videos, because God knows I have a lot of toys to talk about. Um, Marvel Legends, Transformers, so much stuff. There's so much stuff. I have other figures from San Diego Comic Con that I haven't talked about yet, and I still, now we're a couple of months removed. So yeah, I want to talk about all that sort of stuff, but I'm just kind of taking a little bit of a break. I'll I'll get to it eventually. Um, but yeah, so I don't know whether this was needed on here or not. There's I know I have a lot of viewers. Every video I post, I think there's probably 100 of you out there that they'll watch my video regardless of what it's about. Then sometimes I get videos about a certain subject where they spike in viewership because people are just like googling it or whatever. But yeah, for those of you that watch and for those of you that comment a lot, I do feel a little bit of you know, a friendship with. So I just kind of wanted to keep you guys in the loop in case you're wondering why I haven't been around. So yeah, I'll be back. Um, and I debated on doing a whole video about my dad. Um, I don't think I can, just because we had a really good relationship. And at my father's funeral, my older brother Doug and my younger brother Brian, they both spoke at the funeral, and they gave awesome speeches. And everyone, I don't think you're supposed to clap at funerals, but because first my dad's best friend went up and spoke. He did a good speech too, but afterwards everybody just somberly nodded along. But then my brothers both went up and they gave these awesome speeches, and everybody clapped. So I was really proud of them to be able to do that, and I just can't get too emotional. So yeah, I'm able to talk about this with my my wife and my friends, but here doing it on camera, trying to talk to a group of people, yeah, it's hitting me. It's getting a little emotional again. I don't know if I could sit here and talk about stories about my dad, but anyway, my dad was awesome, and he's a big part of why I'm into all this sort of stuff. Not that he was into this stuff at all, but he was just a very supportive father when it came to this sort of thing. I have a very good relationship with my mother as well, and she was awesome. But I probably don't talk about her on this channel nearly as much as I might mention my dad, because my mom was great in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't put her in the category of being supportive of all this necessarily. To this day, she'll ask me like, "Mike, what do you want for Christmas?" And I'm like, "Well, there's this new Godzilla figure I want." And she'll be like, "Oh, come on! Don't you need any dishes or tools or anything like that?" Like, she just doesn't understand why a grown man needs this stuff. And I don't think even when I was a kid, she didn't understand why a kid needed 40 different GI Joes when I already had all those guys at home. But my dad got it. He didn't sit on the floor and play toys with me. I didn't really need him to because I had an older brother, and but there were so many toys that we were into in the '80s, whether it was Transformers, whether it was He-Man, whether it was GI Joe, and we had so much of it. Like, we weren't a wealthy family, but like, my dad was in the military, and he, in fact, just my dad for a time he was in the Black Watch, which was a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a division or something. So I'll put up a picture of him here, and you'll see him in his kilt and everything. That's his Black Watch outfit. So just to give you some context to what that's all about. But yeah, my dad would just like make sure we had all the figures we wanted. He would drive all around town to find the figures we wanted. There was never a Christmas morning that I woke up and said, "Oh, where's Snake Eyes? I really wanted Snake Eyes." Like, there was hot toys we wanted, whether it was Castle Grayskull, like back here, whether it was a Cabbage Patch Kid, um, which I never had a Cabbage Patch child, but I had a Cabbage Patch Kuza, which was a cat. I don't know if you guys remember that, but at the kind of the tail end of the whole Cabbage Patch Kid craze, they did dogs and cats that looked very similar to the children. They just had little noses and ears and stuff. Anyway, I really wanted a Cabbage Patch cat. And so anything like that, my dad would make sure it was there under the tree. I don't think we saw all the efforts that he made behind the scenes driving around to track this stuff down. Um, he would get us grading presents. So every time we finished the school year, he would take us down to Toys R Us and he'd buy us grading presents. I have lots of memories of those. Tomax and Zaymont were the Crimson Twins from GI Joe. Me and my brother Doug, we got those jointly as a grading present one year. So I took one and he took the other. But because that was relatively a small item, because our grading present was usually a good size thing, I think the other thing I got that year to go along with my Tomax was a Lots of Legs Caterpillar, which was another big fad there for a little while. You could get these plush caterpillars that were either like 3 segments, 6 segments, or 12 segments or something. And so I got the big 12 segment, the biggest Lots of Legs Caterpillar that you could get. Um, anyway, so yeah, Dad just always made sure we got what we wanted. He never questioned it. He never said, don't you have enough of these things already? Even as an adult, he'd be the one. If I told him for Christmas that I wanted a Godzilla, Dad would be the one that would go and get the Godzilla, where my mother wouldn't. He just, he was very supportive of it, and it was not just that. Like, I know this channel is about toys, but he was very supportive of like my art and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, um, I don't know if I'm gonna. As I'm shooting this, I don't even know if I'm gonna put it on the end of the video or not. I don't know if it's if this seems silly to share this on my toy channel or not. But anyway, it is what it is. So, yeah, stay tuned for future videos. The next ones will be a little more upbeat. But yeah, hug your dads. All right. See you next time.